Welcome, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast. Today, I'm going to be speaking with Erica Newbert Campbell. Now, she's a writer and a long-term cancer advocate who speaks on vocabulary of cancer. I like that vocabulary of cancer from multiple perspectives. Erica is a breast cancer survivor herself who lost her mum to the same disease, much like me. So, welcome, Erica. Welcome to today's podcast.
Thank you so much, Grace. I'm really honored to be here.
We had a bit of a chat beforehand and we got to know each other's ins and outs sort of, very quickly. But I think we're going to have an amazing podcast. So the first things first, let me praise you on being a breast cancer survivor or a thriver. I know a lot of people don't like, oh, I don't want to be a survivor, I want to be a thriver. So congratulations either way on that. And having said that, let's get started. So let's go back to when you first got diagnosed. How did you get diagnosed? And take us on that journey.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. But, as you introduced me, I lost my mother to breast cancer. And so I was always on high alert, right? Always wanting mammograms and really having to advocate for myself. And I had, for about 10 years, Grace, I had what I call scary mammograms, right? They would say things like, we think we see something, come back in 6 months. Ooh, we're tracking, we're looking at this spot, come back in 6 months. So it was a really long journey where I always was concerned about, is this the time I would get diagnosed? And this went on for about 10 years. And I'll say that I had ultrasounds, MRIs, obviously mammograms. And just right before I got diagnosed, the radiologist said, how about we do a biopsy this time? And I was like, ooh, okay, this is a little bit different. And I had to wait nearly a week to get those results. So it was on a Friday afternoon at like 4:00. I'm in my office and I get that phone call where, the nurse says, are you sitting down and are you alone? And, she didn't almost need to say anything else. And, it was a brief but painful conversation. It confirmed the thing I had been most afraid of for the last 10 years.
What we say is when that phone call or that moment that you get that whole, you have cancer is the moment that everything starts and things change. And like I said earlier, my mum died of uterus cancer, but she had a secondary cancer of either breast cancer first and uterus second, or uterus first, breast, because it was diagnosed pretty much at the same time. So yes, my mum also passed away to cancer again, but she did have breast cancer. And like you, I was also on a high risk category because mum had cancer. So tell us, so that moment you're alone, you get the phone call. Take us through that process. Take us through the emotional side, if you can, as well as, what you had to do going forward.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's that phone call that nobody wants. And I will say that as soon as I hung up, I put my head in my hands and the wave of emotion came over to me, and not just my own diagnosis, but the memories, probably like you, Grace, of like what my mom had been through. And because I'd seen all of the challenges, it was like, I think it was extra heavy for me because I had too much knowledge in that sense, right? I had that vocabulary of cancer already, and I needed to rewrite my own story, right? I think my mother, she did not choose to have a mastectomy at the start. And, kind of far along in her diagnosis, there was a doctor that made a comment that said, if she'd had a mastectomy from the start, she might be not in this place. And like, ugh, that hurt hard. That really stung. And so I will say that, I was alone in my office at work, having all of this wave of emotion, thinking this was the end. And also then, what do I do now? right?
Mm.
I had to call my husband, and that's the phone call. Also, the one that you never want to receive. It's also the one you never want to make.
Yeah.
And I think I uttered the words, nurse called, it's cancer, and then I broke down. I couldn't actually speak another word on the phone to him, and he was like, "Okay, come home." And
Wow.
it's just the heaviness of having to share that with your husband, partner, caregiver, and also like the unknowns, right? It's Friday at 4 o'clock. So I didn't know. I had to sit the whole weekend with like, what's next? And, I went into that following week just tremendously terrified, I have to say. Even though I thought I would be brave because of my mother's journey, I was unprepared at how much fear I would have.
Isn't it crazy? Because what happens is, like your mom, like my mom, we sort of think, oh yeah, and like you said, the vocabulary, we sort of have that, down packed. Yeah, I know what that means, and I know what this means, and when they talk this and when they talk that. But when it's yourself, I always say that breast cancer, even though under the umbrella, is like its fingerprint. It's never the same. It's never
Yes.
the same with the person, and it's never the same of what type of cancer. Yes, you could have that. Yes, it's a HER2 positive, carcinoma and things like that. You can have all estrogen based, all of this, all of these words, but it's still different. So each person's journey is absolutely different, like you said, and not knowing, even though you knew, not knowing, yeah. So I of course I understand how, scary it is, that moment. So then what happened? So the following week you get some appointments and take us through there.
Yeah. I met with a breast surgeon, and of course, they were laying out all the options, right? I could have had a lumpectomy. I could do nothing, right? They could do like, hey, let's just wait a little bit longer. I mean, they weren't really encouraging that option, but, they gave me choices. And then they said, or you could have a single mastectomy or a double mastectomy. And I will say, this is where, at least because I have my experience, I felt pretty confident I wanted that double mastectomy. And, some of the surgeon was like, are you sure that's the harder option? It's a more invasive option. You'd be okay if you just want to do a lumpectomy. But I said, yes, it's a lumpectomy, but I'd have to then go on to radiation and hormone therapy, and other things. And also I would have to then continue to be screened the rest of my life. And that for me was like after 10 years of such scary mammograms, I was like, I gave it the term, Grace, I called it scanxiety, right? It's that anxiety before, during, and after a mammogram. And I was like, I cannot go on with this scanxiety. And so, I chose that double mastectomy pretty quickly. And I would say that, I had to meet with like at least 2 surgeons, and they were like, are you sure? Are you sure? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm sure. Because I
Mm.
just did not want the mental game to keep going afterwards. Obviously there's always risks with such a big surgery, and there's always risks that it could come back, but the percentage chance of recurrence and relapse just shrinks with that double mastectomy. And
Yeah,
so,
isn't it? Yeah. It's interesting because I'm not sure if you know the stats of how many with a double mastectomy, but when I say you were considered one of the lucky ones, because I'm not sure if you're going to say that you still had to do radiation or chemo after that.
I did not. No.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so you're like one of the lucky ones, because a lot of people, and I really want our listeners and our viewers to really understand how different everything is,
Yes.
because like you said, you've gone through that double mastectomy. However, in your case, you didn't do chemo or radiation. But then I hear a lot of women who say, but I still had to do this and I still had to do that. So yeah, so after you've done, so that's a huge surgery. So you went in and had this whole thing, or did you stay flat chested for a while? Take us through that.
Yeah, that's also like, I call it, this is the phase for women, especially if one of your listeners is newly diagnosed. It's like drinking from a fire hose. Like so much is coming at you. It's so fast. And I had to decide at that early stage, did I want to go flat? Did I want to have reconstruction? What kind of reconstruction? Oh my goodness. The volume of choices is like immense. And so I would say I did choose the reconstructive path, which means that, in that initial surgery, there was kind of a handoff between the breast surgeon and then the plastic surgeon. And so they went in and put what's called expanders underneath my muscles. Whew, painful. So you start off flat chested, but it's, I always joke, over the next 6 months, I became like a teenager on steroids, right? Like I went from flat chested to like having these fake reconstructed breasts slowly over time as they added sort of saline into those expanders. Not comfortable, I'll say.
No, I can only imagine. And the whole process would have taken, how long would the whole process have taken?
From the initial surgery until when I felt completely healed was almost a full year.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the thing is, it's, we're looking at the physical side, but what about the psychological side of this?
Yeah. As I mentioned, I'm married and, I have 2 children. So that was great. It's sort of like, psychologically, I was sad to see my breasts go, but I do believe that they had done their job, right? I thanked them for their service, right? They had, looked beautiful in my 20s. They helped me birth children in my 30s, and it was time to go in my 40s.
Wow.
So, interestingly, I had to have that conversation with my husband. Like, are you still going to think I'm beautiful? Am I going to feel beautiful? So not only does he feel that way, do I feel that way? And, of course, my loving husband is like, I'm going to love you no matter what. If you, lost a leg, I'd still love you, right? This is just a body part. But it still is an interesting challenge for women, because if you think about so many stereotypes, you see women in bathing suits on the covers of magazines and things like that. And so I really struggled with that. In fact, as I was in that reconstructive process, there was one point where I was like, I looked down, I looked at my, my chest in the mirror, and I was like, is this just good enough? Right? I didn't need like the full breasts. But I kept going with it. I didn't go bigger than I was. They gave me that option. I was like, no. Thanks anyway. But
thanks for no thanks.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But I will say that my femininity came back, or my feelings of, just my own beauty, right? I mean, not in a vain way, but in just the way you feel. And I get to wear the same clothes that I wore before. I wear a bikini sometimes, right? You can't tell. Surgical doctors are pretty good these days at getting them pretty real.
Yeah, they are. They do it so well because, you don't want to have scarrings and tissues. It depends also, your body shape and everything. But yeah, they're amazing these days how they can make it, look so great. Yeah. So, but I was going to ask as well because, I remember interviewing one lady who said to me, it was like I had 2 aliens in me. I had to get used to that whole thing. Yeah.
It's so funny. I described it for a while as it felt like a necklace that I could never take off. Like one of those like chunky, heavy necklaces that sometimes you want to take off, like they just, it felt weird. I will say I didn't have sensation for a long time, like to touch. So sometimes I'd knock into things. But over time, it actually, like, the sensation has come back. I can feel them. They do feel real. Obviously they're not. I don't even have nipples. I had my nipples removed as well. So I have nipple tattoos, and they look so real.
Yeah.
So real. It's amazing what they can do to your point, emotionally make you feel like yourself again.
Yeah, because we know, not I believe, we know that, for a woman, what makes a woman, what is a woman? The big question these days. But, it is having the breast, it is having a uterus, it is having all of these things that go along with it. So the moment you take away, like you have a double mastectomy, and I was going to ask you if you had to have a hysterectomy, because a lot of people do. I mean, some women have to go through a hysterectomy as well as a double mastectomy. So
Yeah.
you feel that moment where, what am I? What am I now? And finding that identity, not an identity of an external person, but truly finding who you are internally and letting that out. So
100% agree with that. Yeah.
mm,
I didn't have to have a hysterectomy. I've thought about it though, right? It's like, it's another one of those body parts that could silently kill me, right?
yeah,
I've thought about it,
absolutely. Mm,
and I did do the genetic testing.
mhm.
So I did not have the BRCA gene. I thought I did though, with like the fact that my mother had it and I had it. But, I know lots of women who either through the BRCA gene or just by their own choice have had that hysterectomy. I've had skin cancer, and, and it happened, and I write about this right after the breast cancer diagnosis. It went from breast cancer to skin cancer. And I was
Mm.
like, are y'all going to cut away my entire body? Because they had to do this like
Yeah.
surgery to cut that out.
Wow.
And
Mm.
so to your point, it's like, what defines a body? What defines a woman? And like, you've got to let the inner you out. And so it has been this like really holistic journey. And yeah, we're talking about a mastectomy, but it is an inner transformation. And I do agree with you on that, about what matters and what you really are, and how you show up in the world. Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. And the thing is, it's we go through life being mom, being a wife, being, whoever you are at work and things like that. And then all of a sudden now you're looking at yourself thinking, okay, there is something missing. I'm not, making this up. I'm going through the journey of this on a physical level, on a psychological level, on an emotional level, on a spiritual level, and
Yeah.
then trying to find, okay, get to, like, you have, I guess it's like in a way, it's like an amputee, in the sense you've got something missing. You've got to retrain yourself, your inner self, to accept that and learn to live without it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
And we are talking breasts, and people think, well, they're only breasts. No, they're not only breasts. They're
Right.
part of the human body.
Absolutely. Yeah. Gosh. And I even remember after my mom died, I had this hollowed out feeling. And I wonder if this is the way you felt, Grace, where
Mm.
like I almost felt like it was an out of body experience where like I would look out through my eyes, as we all do, but that it was like, because I'd seen my mother pass away, and I was like, oh, it's not really about the body. It is about the soul. Right.
Mm.
And it is about, again, like kind of your inner being. So I really resonate with that when you say that.
Yeah, it's exactly like you said with my mum as well. When it first happened, I remember my husband saying to me, "You got to look at this. Don't turn your head, because this is
Yeah.
reality."
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I looking at my mum and going through her process. She went through chemo. She went through radiation. She went through radiation and chemo for her breast, and then obviously radiation for her uterus. And it was just horrific to watch for my
Yeah.
mum to be, she didn't have a life, because it wasn't radiation, it was chemo, things like that. So it was really, yeah, this is really important to get people to understand that it's not just as easy as people think of having a hysterectomy or a double mastectomy. It's more involved. It's you have to really live with it. And I guess this is my next question. How did it impact you? What changed in your life and what didn't change in your life?
Yeah. Oh gosh, lots of things. And I think one of the things I'm really transparent about is, you know, it was so focused on the physicalness of that journey in the beginning, right? You have to, again, whether it's chemo, radiation, mastectomy, whatever it is, it's like, it's about the physicality. And once all of the buzz died down, I really struggled with some mental health issues. And so I did see a therapist at the recommendation of my surgeon, which I thought was funny. And I resisted it for a really long time because I was like, oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm totally fine. But I had lots of lingering fears. I had fears about relapse, even though that was, something that they were like, oh, no, you're fine. I'm like, you know what? You told my mom that she'd be fine too. And so, I mean, I spent probably 6 months with a therapist, just about once every other week. And I found it really helpful to unpack kind of like just what happened emotionally. So I will say that I have some tools that the therapist gave me, right? I'm sure, Grace, you hear this. You as a host, you hear everybody's story. And how do you not absorb that as your own? Everyone, I'm sure, and every one of your listeners knows somebody else with cancer. And it's really easy to slip into that, like, oh my gosh, do I have that too? Or that little, like, I feel this like sensation right here. Is that cancer too? And so she gave me some really powerful tools and mantras, even to say, like you would say in the beginning, every cancer is unique. That's not my story. Right. And so she gave me those tools to say that. And, so those are the things that emotionally happened. I would say what also changed is, I am more empathetic. I'm more compassionate. I'm a better listener because I do understand that people need to feel seen and heard. And that's what I wanted to do. It just really empowers you to be a better friend. You know what I mean? And gosh, I think cancer is a club you never want to join. But when you get there, if you get there, there are some incredible people that you get to meet. And that's like the silver lining for me. And so I just love the community that has surrounded me, but also that I get to be a part of other people's journey and support others.
Yeah, and the thing is, I always say that it's your journey now isn't for you to keep, but to be shared with others. Yeah, so it's about, it's like you're at service now. The thing is, when someone says what makes you happy, if you are at service for others, that's what makes you happy. A lot of people think, oh, what's happiness? Happiness is serving others. We were put on this, when we say serving others, we're not serving others where we're not serving ourselves first.
Yes.
But, we're sharing and we're learning and we're teaching people. And I quite like the way you said that, because exactly, every time you have pain here, it's like, oh, that's got to be cancer. You have a pain in the back of your neck, that's got to be the cancer. So it is, one thing I for myself, I was a little bit more lucky because I had my husband who's already a mentor. Who actually helped me through my journey. But what I find is that it's a common thing where I speak to a lot of women where they get to the point where it's, okay, we've done everything. See you, go have a nice life. And it's, well, what about this? I call it stuff in my locker. I've had this stuff in my locker. And now what do I do with it? Do I hold on to it? Do I throw it out? Do I donate it? What do I do? And that's the stuff that you go home with, and you go, oh, not only are you dealing with your own, but now you're dealing with this stuff. And they don't have anyone on an emotional level, on a psychological level. And yeah, they go see a therapist, go see this, but why are you actually seeing a therapist? How is that therapist helping you? You don't know. You're going to go in there going, pardon the way I'm saying it, but you're going to go in there going, okay, so I had both my tits cut off and where I am now. You know what I mean? It's like they're going to sit there going, oh, do tell me. It's, you know what I mean? It's, and I think yourself, your book, which we'll touch on next, and things like that, and me speaking to people, me putting it out there and everything, I think it's giving people that opening where you can go, hey, I'm not dealing with this like I thought I would. I had to be strong for my husband, I had to be strong for my kids, but what about me? So things like that, so yeah.
Oh,
I think
totally relate to that. And, I do think it's like, you got the stuff in the locker. And I love what you said, do you donate it? Like, because I do think when you give, you receive, right? And, and so I love that analogy there.
I didn't mean donate the breast you're taken off. Didn't mean that, but it's the other stuff. It's the, you know, the psychological, the spiritual, the, you know, all the emotional side of things where you give back what you, and like you said before, you become a better person. I think you become more authentic.
Oh, for sure. More authentic. That is absolutely, because you kind of have nothing to hide.
And you got nothing to lose.
And you got nothing to lose. Totally. Yeah.
You know, so, but it doesn't mean, like I always say to people, doesn't mean that you're now going to go to your great aunt who you couldn't stand before and you tell her to pee off and things like that. It's not about that. It's about just, like you said, no one wants to be a part of the cancer club, but I believe in my hallucination, cancer comes knocking on your door because something wasn't right in your life.
Oh, I agree with that totally. I agree with that totally.
And now it's saying here, I'm giving you another chance to get it right. Control, Alt, Delete, get it right. Clean slate, get it right. And again, it doesn't mean clean slate. You let go of your husband and your kids and things like that. It's a clean slate emotionally, psychologically, physically, and spiritually. I always say it's a clean slate for that. So you've had this double mastectomy. You're going through. By the way, when did all this happen?
It was about 6 years ago now.
Okay. Yeah, like me. So I was diagnosed in 2018.
Me too.
Yeah. I was diagnosed in August 2018.
Okay. I was April 2018. So
okay. Yeah. Just a little. It's okay. We're there.
But we're twins. We're still twins.
We're still twins. That's right. Came knocking on both our doors. Now, tell us a bit about, like, because the title of your book, which I love, is called The Mastectomy I Always Wanted. Now, when people hear that, they think, what? What do you mean? Is it because she got a breast increase? What is it? You know? So tell us, what made you, you know, we're talking about this, you know, we keep talking about this, so the whole journey, but what made you think, well, now I want to reach out and I want to really write a great book and help others?
Yeah. You know, thank you for saying that about the title, because I knew it would raise an eyebrow, and that's, you know, somewhat intentionally. But the reason I said it's the mastectomy I always wanted, because kind of like we were talking about earlier, it's about choice and it's about your mindset. And so I decided, you know, in this, like, you know, period of, again, when I was diagnosed, fear, and perhaps I'd even say shame, and all of these really bad emotions that come forth, it was like, okay, I got to stop being the victim here, and I got to take my own power back. And to say that I was choosing the mastectomy, right? I had choices. I could have done nothing. I could have chosen other options and other treatments. But to say I'm choosing this mastectomy because I'm choosing myself, and I'm choosing my long-term health, and I'm choosing, you know, the path that's right for me, that started to shift in my mind, that, like, this wasn't a punishment, right? This was a choice to save my life. This was a choice to, you know, make my life better. Kind of that Control, Alt, Delete, to be honest. And so that's why I named it. And there's kind of a funny story, if you want, about what really made me decide to write this, but I can wait on that one.
No, share it. Please share it.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because, you know, I started telling you I was working at the time. I still do, but on the following week after I got diagnosed, I had to tell my team at work that I was going to be out for a few weeks, you know, and with a double mastectomy. And in my office, we had just hired a new consultant, and I didn't know her very well. Lovely woman, but, you know, working on the team. And after the meeting, she pulls me aside and she's like, hey, this is going to sound weird, but I had the same mastectomy surgery 5 years earlier. And would you like to see my breasts? And I'm like, okay, this is a professional setting. I don't even know this person. Like, oh my gosh, but yes, I do. Like, you bet I do, because I was terrified and I had no idea what was about to happen. And so we go off and we find, like, the work bathroom that's, like, way off the beaten path, like, lock the door, and she, you know, pulls off her shirt and she shows me her breasts. Grace, they looked so real and they looked so beautiful that I was like, are you sure? Like, her scars were so faint, and she was so confident about like the way she felt and how happy she was with the results. And, she had her own challenges, but like to see what the end result could look like. She didn't have nipples either. She had the nipple tattoos. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a gift. Such a gift. And it really changed my mindset. I was like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. This is going to suck. It's going to be hard, and I can do it. And I felt like that was such a rare opportunity that I was like, what are the chances? What are the chances that somebody in my office is willing to do this? And I was like, I got to pay this forward. And, I didn't have the intent to write the book in that moment, but I did have the intention of like, so I took pictures before, during, and after, because I wanted someone to be able to see what it was really like in the future. And that was, a couple of years later, I decided to start writing. But that moment was the impetus for this book.
Isn't it crazy how people come into your life at a particular moment and you sort of go, oh, that where did that come from? And I think, like we're saying, it's like it's an unspoken club.
Yes. Totally.
And then when someone comes and and you're able to say, like this lady was able to give you that peace of mind, because like you said, it's not like you went into the surgeon and he said, by the way, this is what you're going to look like. He's not going to say that. He's just talking the lingo, the doctor lingo of you're having this is why we're doing a double mastectomy. Are you sure? Because obviously he's asked you a couple of times psychologically, are you ready for this? He's talking doctor's terms. So to have someone come and say, hey, this is the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. I even asked my doctor in these, I said, what's it going to look like right after the surgery? He's like, well, I don't have pictures, but trust me, you'll be okay. Or trust me, it'll be like this. And I was like, okay. And he said that women didn't normally allow him to share photos. And I was like, well, why not? And again, to your point, I became so authentic that I was like, I would give these things to any woman who wanted them. And that's kind of like what happened is that, obviously friends and family knew what I went through. And so a couple of years later, lots of people reached out. Hey, my friend just got diagnosed. Can you talk to her? So I ended up like texting my photos of my chest to these random strangers that I was more than happy to help. And I was like, I've done this now like 5 or 6 times. Maybe I should write a book about it. And that was kind of also the reason I was like, okay, this is making a difference for women. It's giving them comfort, and I'm able to coach and like you talk them through it. And then I can show these photos of like, here's what I look like right afterwards. Here's what I look like today. It's amazing. It's going to stink. It's going to be really hard. And here's where you're going to get to. And so that I was like, okay, I think I'm onto something, because this is really supportive to women who are where I was years ago.
Absolutely. It's, what you're doing is you're sharing your story, but you're sharing the possibility of this is what mine looks like. This is what yours could possibly look like. And like you said, as opposed to, oh, well, I don't have photos. And I think I'm like you. I mean, I didn't have a mastectomy or anything, but I had a lumpectomy. I had some lymph nodes taken out. If someone said to me, hey, what does it look like when it gets bruised up? I've got photos of it bruised up. This is what you're going to probably go through. This is normal. I mean, for me, I had a heart attack. I'm in the change room and I see underneath my arm is all black and I get scared. There's a big fat lump there and I'm petrified. I call my surgeon, and she's like, no, that's okay. It's a fluid buildup. She did take a sample to test it, but it was just a fluid buildup. But not knowing you're already going through the path that you're afraid.
Yes. Yes.
And then all of a sudden you're like, is this normal? Is this normal? And then there's no one to say, yeah, it's normal.
Yeah.
So the pictures are in the book as well. It's a picture book. No, the pictures are in the book as well.
Yeah.
Which is great. I think I commend you on that, because it's one thing to tell the story. It's another thing to share what you mean.
Yes. Yeah. And, and since the book's been released, I have had women say, oh my God, this was so helpful, because they just didn't know what to expect. and even interestingly, their caregivers, like their husbands or boyfriends or partners, because then the husbands were more like, okay, I know what I'm going to see. And they had more confidence, more strength, and were better able to, understand kind of what it looks like, but also the emotion. So I do include that as well. And that's the piece that people have been like, okay, that's really vulnerable and authentic too.
That's it. I'm glad you picked, you pointed that out about the caregivers or your partners or anything like that, because, for a partner, to be intimate, he wants or she wants to be able to give you that stimulation, when they and think, oh, we're adults here, and and it's okay, people. For those of you playing at home, and the thing is, like you said, you don't know. They probably think, oh, am I able to get her to the point where she was when I used to make love to her and things like that, so it's important because they don't understand, like you said, you got sensation back. Not many women do. So
Right.
what do you do? Like, how do you have that chat? Because here they are also looking at something that's foreign. It looks great on the outside, but they know now it's different. So, it's incorporating that. And I think it's really important to, to have that chat with your partner, to have it and say, hey, this is okay. This is normal. And we're going to get through this.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's the book, I think, enabled that conversation with some folks. I agree.
Yeah, and I think it's perfect. That's why I brought it up, because having that in there, it's that uncomfortable, by the way, this is what's happening. Because yes, like my husband would have said the same. Grace, you want to go do it, you do it. I will love you regardless of what you decide to do. But then it's the other side. It's that moment of you're trying to survive.
Yeah.
Now we're on the other side, and it's like, okay, like we said, now you've got this bag, you've got this locker. It's like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
What I got to talk about these uncomfortable, because it's not only that, like, I speak to a lot of women who weren't intimate because they were very scared. Fear
Yeah.
brought that up as well. So it's bringing all of that up, that it's when we say it's normal to go through all these processes, because what you're doing is you're just trying to protect yourself.
Yes.
So yeah, so that's great that you have that, in your book. I'm going to be buying your book. So I just didn't have the chance yet. So, because I was overseas and things like that, because I want to support you, but also I want to, mention the book as well. So, so with that, having said all of that, what else can we find in the book?
Oh my gosh. The most interesting piece and feedback that I've gotten is that what you might find in the book is poetry. Now you're like, wait, what? I'm not a poet, right? But what that came from is when I was diagnosed, we talked about this earlier. I had so many emotions, so many big fears, big feelings. I didn't know what to do with them. And actually, I think it was a friend of mine suggested I keep a journal. And I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like, that's not going to help me. And, but I was like, I'll try it anyway. And I have a tween daughter. She was like, probably 8 to 10 years old. I can't remember now. So I stole one of her like journals she wasn't using. So it's like this teal thing that I was writing in. And I was so broken at the time. That I wrote in broken sentences in this journal. I'd write every night, and just angry words sometimes if I was in that anger phase, or I would write really just sad stories. Some people said really weird things to me, right? Like when I told them I had been diagnosed, some people said helpful things, and I just jotted it all down, but it was all fragmented. So again, years later, when I went to write them, I just started transcribing that journal. That's how it all started. And I was like, these are fragments, but they kind of feel like poetry. So I decided to keep it in the book. And I was really, I would say, almost nervous to leave it in, because it's a book about breast cancer. It's a memoir. Like, why would there be poetry kind of stuck in the middle? It turns out that's people's favorite part. which I think so fascinating. So fascinating. And I think it's because that, especially for women in that journey, that fragmentation where your mind is so like just it's running a mile a minute. There's so many decisions, so many things. That's the piece that spoke most to people. So I think that's something you can find in the book, that again has been the most popular part so far.
And I think that's because people can see that vulnerability.
Yes. It's
A
super
vulnerability to me equals strength, equals courage, because the more vulnerable you are, the more courageous you are to be able to speak out and say, hey, I'm feeling like this today. Because like you said, you go through all these different, you go fear, and it's actually the, what do you call it? The 7 stages of grief.
Yes, absolutely. It totally was the 7 stages of grief, because there was denial, there was fear, there was anger, bargaining. I can't remember all 7, but that's
Yes,
all of
that's
those.
right.
Acceptance
Yeah.
and acceptance at the end. Yeah. And I think
And,
also,
and that,
oh, go ahead.
yeah. No, go ahead.
I just said the other thing people can find in the book is actually practical tips. So I made sure to make this, again, you and I have been there, Grace. When a woman is newly diagnosed, they don't have a lot of time and they need it straight. So the book is really authentic and vulnerable. And I just put in, here are some practical things you can do to prepare. Because again, it's a very short book. It's an easy read. You can read it in probably an hour and 15 minutes. But that was intentional, because women are busy. Women are dealing with a lot of emotions at that stage of sort of the initial diagnosis shock. And so I think you'll find practical tips and an easy to read book.
Yeah, it's great to have, like you said, because I do the same where, mine is actually just right behind me somewhere, just, I don't know, there.
Oh, there you go.
Somewhere there anyway. And it's a journal. But I also put in little tips about, what is breast cancer? What are all these tests they want you to do? What does it mean when they talk like this? And the questions to ask and things like that. But I really believe that journaling is really important. When I say journaling is important, it's important because the thing is, we don't vent the same way to a partner, to a mother, to a father, to a brother, to a sister, to a friend, because we want to reserve that. We don't want to hurt we don't want to make it worse for them, and also, to the point, and I'm sure you went through this, where people don't know what to say. And then they say crazy things and you go,
yes,
that doesn't help. I'm sorry, but that doesn't help. But they don't mean it intentionally, So what we do is, by journaling, like you said, anger, I know, I've got so many journals that they're scratched. They're scratched in there. And I think that's because that was my, my moment of, not why me, because I did ask that once, and why not me? But, but it was more that whole, that whole anger of, because in my hallucination, I believe that it was because I was carrying traumas of my past. That's my hallucination. I always say that cancer doesn't come out, a disease doesn't come out unless something you were off. It was like you were off. So I think it's really important to put that in. And that's why I'm saying, because the book, like you said, get there, get in, get quick, get the information. People don't have time to once upon a time sort of thing,
Exactly. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I just wanted women to get in, get out, get what they need, feel validated, feel less alone, see what it's going to look like, and know it is going to be okay.
Yeah, that's great. Because the thing is, Google's your friend, but it could be your enemy. Because Google Doctor can make you have an extra nipple or something. So yeah, it does. So what you want to do is you want to get to the authentic people and say, hey, and I always say that my breast cancer journey might not resonate with someone, but someone who listens or hears or watches you says, that actually resonates. What Eric is saying resonates with me.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There's some passages that, women, again, who are newly diagnosed read back to me and said, this is the one that made me feel so much better. Or this is the one that validated, that weird fear that you kind of nailed it, the one that you're like, or that person who says the thing that's so unhelpful. Everybody has one of those. And,
Mm.
and just, it made people laugh, cry, and just, again, feel seen and heard.
Yeah, and I think it's perfect. I think, the way you're describing the book, and as I said, I normally buy the book before I interview, and the thing is, and like you said, I love reading, so I would have been able to read it in no time. Not because you're saying it's a short one, but because once I'm in, that's it. You
Yeah.
can the whole place could be falling apart, and I'm just sitting here reading. And so what I wanted to say is I can't wait to see it, because I want to share that. And I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate you sharing your story and being at service for others, because this is what we need to, like my podcast is about everything from the doctor's perspective to a patient's perspective. So it's everything, and not everyone's the same. So,
Yeah.
I love the way that we both here totally different, but we're here. We're both here with breast cancer survivors or thrivers, but
Both.
also at the same time, our journeys are different. So, and I think I really think that people should get your book, especially if it's to the point where they're thinking of, a mastectomy. So like you said, probably go back a little, but you said also you had a choice between to have it, not to have it.
Yeah.
Did they push you to have the mastectomy ASAP, or did you have a little bit of time to make that decision?
That's a great question. It's interesting. They did not push me. In fact, I pushed them. And what I mean by that was, once I'd made the decision, I was like, get me the first appointment. Because this is the one thing I learned from my mother's journey, is the waiting is the worst, right? Because you're waiting for test results, or you're waiting until the surgery, and then your mind just goes into those places. So I actually chose the first available appointment. So I went from like that first phone call to an actual surgery probably in about 2 weeks. Like, I
Oh,
was like,
wow. Mm.
well, actually maybe a little bit longer, maybe 3, but I really just wanted to relieve my mind,
Yeah.
right? You know, I would say even that felt like a long time, because every day you just in this dark place of, fear and wonder. How
Mhm.
painful is it going to be? Or am I going to die? And what else are they going to find? And I just wanted to do it as soon as possible, which I know is somewhat counterintuitive, but I just couldn't wait to start relieving my mental game as much
Yeah.
as my physical.
And then going forward now, because you said you didn't do radiation, you didn't do chemo. So are you, because I just want, the viewers and the listeners to
Yeah.
understand, again, this is disclaimer, this is your journey, but, everyone's different. So we're not saying what you're about to answer is what's going to happen for them. But having said all of this, do you have to have annual checkups, or do you have to, what happens the after effect of having the double mastectomy? Because it's different. You haven't had chemo, you haven't had radiation. It's reduced, obviously, the percentage of you getting breast cancer. But what does that mean going forward?
Yeah, I was really grateful. As much as I told you that, I was under high scrutiny, but that's why we caught it early, right? And that's why I didn't have to have some of those things. So I'm a very powerful advocate for advocating for yourself and getting mastectomies, getting mammograms as often as your insurance or as that as your healthcare provider will allow. But yes, no, I was, and I still remain under scrutiny, right? There's always that risk. So I did have to meet with an oncologist for several months afterwards. After the first year, I think it was like every other month. And then it went down to like every 6 months. Then I was with him for 5 years. He just released me out into the world. But, I will say, I kind of miss that, And the reason I say that is, the oncologist was all over me, right? Meaning, like, if I said, I have a little pain in my stomach, he's like, all right, we're getting an ultrasound on your stomach, and so that level of scrutiny, I really valued the attention that I put on early detection and screening. Like I said, I had that skin cancer because I had made sure that I'd gotten to the dermatologist. I've had a colonoscopy. I've had MRIs, because I do want to make sure that if it does come back, I want to be sure that there's an early detection piece to it. So I highly recommend advocating for yourself and getting checked as often as you can.
Did you take anything with the oncologist? Were you on tablets at all or anything, or nothing?
I decided against nothing. He gave it to me as an option, and I decided to wait and see. So I didn't take anything.
Okay. But that was, like you said, though, it's great that even though you had the double mastectomy, yes, it reduces it dramatically, but it doesn't mean, like you said, you just go on your merry way. You really want to make sure that you're on top of things.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I did further genetic testing too, not just the BRCA gene, but all of the genetic markers. And I just think it's really powerful to take control of your health. I said I became the CEO of my health and of my body.
Yeah, and sometimes you need to do that, see, because like I said before, life came knocking on your door, and you got to take, you got to do the right thing. Now, I know you said you had children. Are they girls?
Yeah. So I have a teenage daughter and a 11-year-old son. And
Okay.
I will say, she has said to me, Mom, what about me? Right? Her grandmother and her mother and her grandmother on my husband's side has all had breast cancer. It's a little, it is kind of alarming for her, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? Because the thing is, it's crazy how you just said now that your mum had it, but also your grandmother. So her mother, your mother, yourself. I'm the same situation, yet I'm not in the BRCA either. But it doesn't, you know what I mean? But the thing is, what we're saying is, they're actually saying these days it's a less of a chance being genetic, and it's a higher chance of being 1 in 3 women.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, what we want to make sure is, and like your daughter, yeah, of course, she's now got this in the back of your head. So early detection is important, or having screenings done is really important. I agree with you. So was there anything else you wanted to touch on, Erica, that we possibly missed?
Oh, good question. Again, I do, like I said, I want to advocate for any listener to, advocate for themselves and make sure you're getting mammograms, and trust yourself. That's like, so I have 3 themes that I talk about in the book, which is, never give up, because, that's just really important. Number 2 is you're not alone. And number 3 is trust the process, which includes trusting yourself. And I think, we talked a lot about today in this recording about, kind of finding out who you really are. And that's what cancer does to you. And that's sometimes a good thing.
I think so. I think it's, everyone says, was it a blessing or was it a curse? And I always say, in my case, it was a blessing, because I got to live who I'm supposed to be. And it gave me that opportunity to rewrite, from 47 years onwards. So how old were you when you got diagnosed?
I was 45.
Okay. Yeah, I was 47. So it just allows you to just rewrite the next chapter of your life, or the next half of the book,
Yes.
So, yeah. And I'm all for it as well. I advocate, definitely get your mammograms and ultrasounds and things like that up to scratch, especially if you're in your late 40s, early 50s, 60 plus. Go get your screening done. So was there anything else? I'm going to share if you want to follow Erica, she's on Instagram, erica.n.campbell. or Facebook is erica.newbert. So tell us that little story that you told me about your middle name, Erica. Let's share a funny story about your middle name.
Yes. So I married a gentleman named Ian Campbell. So I became Ian Campbell. I'm sorry, Erica Campbell. And when I was writing this book, they said, well, go get the website, ericacampbell.com. I would not recommend you do that because there are two other Erica Campbells. One is a Christian gospel singer, beautiful music. And the other one is a former porn star. And so ericacampbell.com is already taken and it redirects to Penthouse. So please don't do that on a work computer. And, I would say between a Christian gospel singer and a porn star, I probably fall somewhere in between. And so it is Erica Newbert Campbell. I do make a point to mention that middle name so I can distinguish myself in that way. You can see, actually, here's the copy of the book. You can see that. So there's like Erica Newbert Campbell in there.
Yes, you can see that. So, and I'll make sure I share all your links for the Instagram and Facebook, and also the title of your book as well. So, Erica, just before we wrap it up, is there anything else you want to share with our listeners and our viewers today?
Yes, I would love to hear from fellow breast cancer thrivers and survivors. Please visit my website, ericanewbertcampbell.com, because you can share your story there. There's actually resources. There's a top 10 tips for preparing for a mastectomy you can share with any friends. And also, I just love hearing from women. I really do. I want to create a community. So please reach out. And thank you so much.
You are welcome. And I'm sure that if anyone has any questions about, having a mastectomy, if it's something that was brought to your attention while you went through your breast cancer journey, you're just being diagnosed, and it's something you want to do, or it's something that your surgeon has recommended for you to do, just take that 5-minute step back and contact someone like Erica and ask her the questions. And I'm sure she'll be more than happy to reply to any questions. And if not, she'll direct you to the right places. So I thank you, Erica. This has been fun. I can't wait to get your book, like I said, and have a read of it, because even though I didn't go through the journey you went through, I like you said, I love hearing about other stories, because I want to empower women out there. And this is why I do this podcast, to share these stories, because you see the good, the bad, the ugly, the sad, but you see the authentic of the people that I interview. So thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Thank you so much, Grace. You're an incredible leader and a generous spirit to create this podcast for other women. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I can't wait to follow you and follow your journey and what you're up to next and things like that. So thanks again. And to everyone else, like always, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and I wish you all so much love and light. Okay.